All right, what is going on, folks? It is Will here from across the plane, and we are here to give you our Week 11 fantasy preview. Uh, you can go ahead and give us a follow on Instagram and Twitter at Across the Plane, and make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube as well as hit the bell. We will be going live and uploading 2 to 3 videos every single week. Above me is
I'm Jake the Rookie, fantasy football analyst and sports guy. And you can follow me on Twitter, and it's spelled THA, like across the plane to my left. That's our full length podcast. You can catch that on Spotify or anywhere you can really listen to podcasts, and YouTube. And yeah, follow us on YouTube, hit the bell, and you'll get notified when our videos come up.
absolutely. And if you ever have any questions about your trades or lineups, make sure you hit us in the comments. Hit us on Twitter. I know the deadline for many leagues is this week in fantasy football. So it's a big week. I hope you guys got a win last week. It was a big week for running backs, and we're getting into the stretch run here of the fantasy football season, and it's really time to make the right decisions, and where those decisions you make are going to impact, potentially, your whole season's outlook.
Yeah, especially in leagues where you win money and stuff. I know it's important to these next 4 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're gonna kick off the week with some waiver wire additions. And our number one waiver wire is going to be Wayne Gallman, owned in 39.4% of NFL fantasy leagues. And honestly, it should be higher. Devonta Freeman just has had that nagging injury and cannot stay on the field. And Wayne Gallman's been a great player now. Scored a touchdown 4 weeks in a row. Had 2 touchdowns last week, and he looks really good running the football.
Yeah, I'll say he looks better than Freeman when Freeman's been on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's seen his touches now increase 4 weeks in a row, going from 10 to 12 to 14 to 18 touches in a row. Now, keep in mind, he is on a bye this week, but I do think he's still worth adding because coming out of the bye, he plays Cincinnati, Seattle, and Arizona, and those are all very favorable defenses.
Yeah, and maybe you're worried about Devontae Freeman coming back and, splitting carries, and that's realistically that could be an issue, but Wayne Gallman has been getting into the end zone, so worth at least rostering and considering putting in your lineup.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think if you have the bench spot, he's worth adding. Next up is going to be a player that we think can definitely help you a little bit more this week to get a win. And that's going to be Salvon Ahmed for the Dolphins. He had a great game against Cardinals. Against the Chargers. Had 21 carries for 85 yards, and he got a touchdown.
Yeah, he did. The usage was up. He only played a few snaps in the first game, but it seemed like he was the number one back, and I worry about maybe Matt Breida coming back.
Yeah, they did release Jordan Howard.
But they did release Jordan Howard, so I think they're confident in giving Ahmed touches, and he's been he looks very good.
Yeah, and it's a very favorable matchup against Denver this week. So I think Salvon Ahmed is definitely a player who's going to find his way into my rankings this week. I think he is set up for another pretty solid game against a weak Denver defense. Next up is the star of Thursday Night Football, Nyheim Hines, owning 35.5% of NFL fantasy leagues. He's been hit or miss, definitely, but
he's safer in PPR leagues.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. He had 12 carries for 70 yards, a touchdown, and then he had 6 targets for 5 catches, 45 yards, and a touchdown. Playing 56% of the offensive snaps. It's tough with this backfield. It really is.
It is, but I say for PPR, I say I like him the most. He's been getting in the end zone, and they run him out with the empty backfield. They usually have him out as a receiver still.
Yeah, I think he's my personal favorite out of the backfield. If he can continue to see close to double digit or more carries, and then see 4 to 6 upwards. Week 1 he had 8 catches. And I think he can have a couple more weeks where he has a big passing game. He has 3 really favorable matchups coming up. Plays Green Bay, Tennessee, and Houston, all super porous defenses. So I think Nyheim Hines can definitely have some really positive contributions the next couple weeks.
Agreed.
Next up, we got Damien Harris. And this is going to be much more of a standard scoring league, but he just isn't really a factor in the passing game. But he's a talented runner, and he's been getting the touches. He's been getting, he had 22 carries for 121 yards, and he's been having a very efficient season.
Yeah, he's had multiple 100-yard rushing games.
Yeah, every game he's averaged double-digit carries. He's averaged over 5 yards a carry. So.
And I'm pretty sure every game he's touched the ball over 15 times, he's gotten 100 yards.
Yep, that is also true. So yeah, Damien Harris, very talented runner, but again, not a threat in the passing game, but has some super favorable matchups. Plays Houston, then Arizona, then the Chargers. So you're hoping he's going to find his way into the end zone, and I definitely think that's a very likely possibility that he does.
Yeah, I think 28% seems kind of low to me. I just wonder.
Keep in mind this is NFL Fantasy League, so this is not
ESPN
across all Yahoo, CBS,
Yahoo.
ESPN. This is just NFL. So Damien Harris, if he's out there, going and put a waiver for him. He's probably not out there if you're in a deeper league, but
yeah, definitely not.
Definitely could be out there if you're in a 10 or 12 man league, and could have some really, really good value these next couple weeks, especially in standard scoring.
Agreed.
All right. And next up, we got Kalen Ballage. It looks like Austin Eckler, reports have been coming out. He could be looking for a week 12 return, so out one more week. But Justin Jackson on IR, Joshua Kelly is just not the guy. And I think Kalen Ballage could be in line for a really big week this week. Just this 1 week, they play the Jets. Again, no Eckler, no Justin Jackson. And he got 18 carries last week, 15 the week before. And most importantly, 2 weeks ago when he got those 15 carries, he saw 39% of the snaps. But last week he saw 73% of the snaps. So
it was a quote-unquote revenge game against Miami.
Yeah, and he saw 5 catches.
Didn't he play New York Jets earlier this year? So call this a revenge game too. I like him. I think he should be owned in more leagues, especially for Week 11.
Yeah.
With Eckler coming back, I understand him not being much of a factor beyond this week. But
Yeah.
I feel like start him this week.
Out of these guys, I think Salvon Ahmed and Kalen Ballage have the highest chance this week. I think if you're looking for a long-term player, you go with the Nyheim Hines or Wayne Gallman or Damien Harris.
Yeah.
But
I can agree.
Yeah.
But I think Salvon Ahmed is long term too.
Yeah. We'll see. Myles Gaskin was only on the short-term IR, so
that's true. But I think Ahmed will produce, and I also think Kalen Ballage could be a good option as well going forward. Just like I'm not worried about Chargers really just locking down like that. That was the first game we've seen a running back take over 60% snap share, I think.
Yep.
So that was rare.
Yeah,
and I think when Eckler comes back, I don't think he's going to be seeing 73%. So I think it was just rare.
I think it was, it was they were going to run the ball a lot against Miami. I think they're going to run the ball a lot against the Jets, and I think it's a 1 week thing. But again, I think long term Wayne Gallman, I really think is going to be the starter for the rest of the season, and he has some really favorable matchups. He just has the bye this week, so that might actually play. If he is on the waiver, he might, guys might go to their waiver and look at the projected, and he's going to be way at the bottom, and you might be able to get him at a lower waiver priority if he's there this week.
For sure.
Yeah, because against Cincy, Seattle, and Arizona, those are all very favorable matchups, and he has high touchdown upside. And you'd like to see the catches increase for Wayne Gallman. Week 7, he had 5 catches, and he hasn't seen more than 1 since. But yeah, it's all of these guys I think are actually pretty solid. There's yeah, I actually feel pretty good about all these running backs though.
Agreed.
All right, and next up we got Jakobi Meyers. We got the picture of him throwing that touchdown.
Yeah. I mean, what can I say about him? He doesn't seem like he's not going to be productive. It just seems like we can count on him for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
The Patriots offense really doesn't have much weapons, and he seems very versatile and very dependable.
Absolutely. Everyone thought, I mean, a lot of people thought it was going to be, he just was not going to be able to perform, and it was just that he had played, the Jets and the Bills, but he played very well, had 5 catches for 59 yards on 7 targets. That's now at least 6 targets 4 weeks in a row. And his next 3 weeks, he's playing Houston, Arizona, and the Chargers. So super favorable matchups there. And at Houston, he could potentially be in line for another big game like he had against the Jets, or double-digit targets.
Yeah, and I heard he used to be a quarterback. I mean, I didn't really know much about him until like.
I wouldn't be surprised. They've in the past, Julian Edelman used to be a quarterback, and in the past they've ran some plays where Julian Edelman is had some passing touchdowns.
Who used to be quarterbacks are just so good at getting open because they think like a quarterback, but they're a receiver now.
Yeah, and it's
reminds me like a Terrell Pryor maybe.
Yeah, he's I really like Jakobi Meyers this week against Houston, so I think Jakobi Meyers would be probably my top waiver wire ad for receivers.
I agree.
Next up, we'll talk about Tim Patrick, and he's had his, and this is probably a PPR ad. He's had 3 touchdowns on the year. He's had, he's seen a decent target share. He's got, it's Drew Lock isn't great. I think Jerry Jeudy is the more favorable one. But I do think Tim Patrick has high upside. We've seen him with some 100-yard games. He does get a decent target share. And the Denver's going to be down a lot, and they are going to be throwing a lot.
Yeah, he's pretty good. But like you said, Drew Lock not the best. So just it's somebody to roster. I probably wouldn't start him. There's so many receivers doing well this year.
Yeah, he's definitely a deeper league ad, but definitely a player that I think if you are in a deeper league and you are thinner at wide receiver, he's definitely a player you could pick up and add. Next up, we'll talk about Jalen Reagor. And again, this is another offense that's really tough, but I mean, he had 7 targets last week, 6 targets the week before. I do think he could be the favorite target for Carson Wentz. I didn't like Fulgham last week, and it looks like Fulgham might not be a thing going forward.
Yeah, I don't know. He played snaps for sure, but it just didn't.
There's so many targets.
It was a weird game.
Yeah, and Carson Wentz just isn't that good. On top of that, with so many targets and a quarterback that's not that good, it's going to be hard for all the players to eat.
I can blame him for not being good, but that offensive line's pass rush is terrible.
Yeah.
So but I think a gadget player like Reagor is definitely gonna be all right.
I think he is my favorite Philly wide receiver going forward.
I agree.
But I'm not really high on any of them. Any of the three of Alshon, Jeffrey, Fulgham, or Jalen Reagor.
Yeah, I agree. Or Greg Ward.
No. Especially with Zach Ertz returning soon.
Right. Is that it for waiver?
No, we got a couple more. Michael Pittman Jr.
Oh yeah. Only owned in 1% of leagues. I think this is the best receiver to have on the Colts offense right now. He's a rookie. Looks like they're trying to get him involved more going forward, and he's good.
Yeah, he's very he's very talented. He's really tall. 7 targets 2 weeks ago against Baltimore. Last week against Tennessee, 8 targets for 7 catches and 100 yards.
The big rush.
He's seeing over 80% of the snaps. We'll see if Jair Alexander plays plays against the Colts, but then after that he plays Tennessee again, who he just torched, and then Houston. So some favorable matchups coming forward, deeper leagues. I think he has some big play potential and some good PPR play too.
I agree. I think this is one of the guys you might want to get ahead of, especially like I'm not. Maybe he won't crack your starting lineup, but just he could be a guy that does, like a T. Higgins. I like T. Higgins' situation better at quarterback. Obviously, I'm not a big fan of Phillip Rivers, but I like Michael Pittman, and it's somebody I think you should try to grab before they get way too popular and you're no longer able to.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. Next player we'll talk about, if you need a tight end, we'll talk about Jordan Reed quick. Came back from injury week 9, only played 23% of the snaps. That bumped up to 45% of the snaps against New England. He had 6 targets, 5 catches for 62 yards. I think he could see a decent target share going forward. Nick Mullins can, he can produce fantasy relevance in his pass catchers, and I think he could turn out to be, with George Kittle out, if he can stay healthy. Now, obviously, that's a big if with Jordan Reed, and that's always the question. But if he's healthy, I think he could, I think he could be a decent low end tight end one.
Yeah, he's probably a good streaming option. Matchup dependent. I like him though. If he can stay on the field, he's definitely worth a spot on your roster.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, he's on a bye this week, but I think he's a player that you could stash and could have some, some success.
Upside.
Yeah.
Has upside. He might be the second most targeted receiver on that team, maybe number 1. It's just we'll have to see how it pans out the rest of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And next up, that's going to wrap it up for the waiver wire. Next up, we'll talk about a couple of streaming quarterbacks and a couple of streaming defenses for week 11. And our streaming quarterbacks, we're going to talk about Jameis Winston. Obviously, it looks like Drew Brees is not going to be playing. And, we're not sure what we're going to get out of Jameis Winston. He only threw the ball 10 times. Didn't get a touchdown, no turnovers. But he looks like he's going to be the starter the next week at home against Atlanta.
Yeah, it does. And it's a favorable matchup. I think he's personally going to be all right.
Yeah,
I'm not worried about them falling off. He didn't necessarily do well against Atlanta last year. I'm not going to say that he torched them because he actually played poorly. But
he averaged 280 yards he's averaged in his career 9 games against the Falcons. He's averaged 280 yards for like 3 touchdowns with 1 interception. So,
and that defense is bad this year.
yeah, and he's got some favorable matchups going forward. I think New Orleans might play it cautious, especially if they get the win this week, because then they play Atlanta, then they play Denver, then they play Atlanta again. They could win all 3 of those and play it cautious like they did with Teddy Bridgewater last year. And I think with Jameis Winston and that team, they could definitely win all 3 of those games.
Yeah, I don't see him throwing 8 picks in his 2 games against Atlanta this year. If he does end up playing twice against them.
No, I think he has. It's Jameis Winston. He has high upside. I think when he gets more comfortable as a starter this week, I think we may see him open things up a little bit.
I got him pinned in for a good 20 points this week.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think he's, I think he's a start this week for me.
Yeah.
So I think Jameis Winston's a streamer at home against Atlanta. Next up, we'll talk about Alex Smith.
He had a lot of yards, almost 400 yards passing. Did not throw a touchdown.
Did not throw an interception.
And you know what? Stayed on the field.
Yeah. They threw the ball 50 times. He played well. And again, he didn't get a touchdown, but he completed almost 70% of his passes, throwing the ball 55 times. Obviously, they got a couple rushing touchdowns, but any given week, that could easily be a passing touchdown for Alex Smith, and that could have been a very big game. And he has 2 favorable matchups coming up versus Cincy and then at Dallas. So Alex Smith could be a nice streamer for the next 2 weeks.
I agree.
Next guy.
Oh, you like that?
Kirk Cousins. He got the win Monday night.
He did. He actually played a very, very decent game.
I agree with you, and I will say that he threw for almost 300 yards. He had 2 touchdowns, and that would have gotten him to about 20 points there. And the interception that he did have really wasn't his fault.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was dropped by Thielen, right in the numbers. It just, yeah. Last week, if you would have streamed Kirk Cousins, I think you would have been crazy, but fine.
If you stream a quarterback and they get you, again, for me, if they can get you like 19 points or more.
He did better than our streaming options that we told you last week. So
he was our 3rd streamer, was he?
I mean, last week we didn't have a video, but I don't even know if Cousins made our top 20, did he?
I don't think so, but
yeah.
Plays at home against Dallas, and again, could be a very run-heavy game, but I do think he could potentially, 250 to 300 yards and 2 to 3 touchdowns. And if he can limit the turnovers, he's had 1 interceptions in the last 3 weeks, and again, like we said, it really wasn't his fault. And it's another, Chicago's a good defense, but Dallas is a very poor defense.
Yeah, it's a tentative stream for me. I'm not going to go all in on this one.
No, he's definitely the 3rd streaming option there. But I think Kirk Cousins could get you at least 18 points this week.
I think I like Alex Smith the best out of them.
Okay.
I think I like him better than Jameis, actually. But I do think Jameis will be safe against Atlanta. It's just a bad defense.
Yeah, very bad defense. So, see which one which one of those you guys can pick up off waivers. Next up, we'll talk about some defenses, and we'll talk about the Chargers defense. They play the Jets this week, and that's really all it is.
Yeah, that is all it is. It's not looking great for them. It's not. But they can get sacks. They can get turnovers, and it's the Jets. But they still can find a way to lose the game because it's the Chargers. So watch out for a Jets win this week. Just watch out.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not going to predict the Jets win,
I'm not gonna predict it either, but beware.
but yeah,
If
I
there
mean,
is a team to lose to the Jets, it's this Chargers team
yeah,
that finds a way to lose.
yeah, you're hoping for a Flacco turnover and some sacks, but again, I think they could have a decent floor because they're playing the Jets.
Oh yeah, Jets are 30th.
Yeah,
New York Jets 30th against the defense.
yeah, so they could be a very decent
Fantasy
play next
football.
week. Next, Cleveland Browns. That's obviously a much, much, much more talented defense. They play Philly, and I think I'd probably be a little bit higher on the Cleveland than than the Chargers. Um, in NFL leagues, they're only rostered in about 12% of leagues. They play Philly, and Carson Wentz is just a turnover machine. And Cleveland has a pretty good pass rush with Myles Garrett there, and I think Carson Wentz is going to be forced into some mistakes.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And we've been seeing bad weather and wind, so maybe that trend continues in Cleveland. And that favors the defense, in my opinion. And Carson Wentz is averaging 2 turnovers a game, so I'm looking to match up against turnover-prone quarterbacks when
Yeah,
I stream defense.
absolutely. And next up, that's going to be the Minnesota Vikings at home. Um, I think we can expect some turnovers and some sacks, whether it's uh, Andy Dalton. We're not sure who's going to suit up yet for the Cowboys, be it Andy Dalton or Gilbert. I think they could have a decent floor.
I think they will get a sacks and turnovers,
Yeah,
if not multiple of each. So I think this is a really good streaming play this week, no matter who the quarterback is.
yeah. So yeah, all three of these plays I feel pretty good about. But again, I do think Cleveland
Hopefully,
is the top option out of these three.
hopefully Kendricks is playing next week. We have
Hmm.
to see about that.
Yeah, but yeah, I do think that definitely in my mind, out of those three, I'm highest on Cleveland.
Yeah, I can I can't argue with 2 turnovers a game from the quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, and that's gonna wrap it up for the streamer options. Next up, we're gonna talk about a couple players that we think you should trade for, and a couple players that we think you should trade away. Obviously, this is the deadline, so make sure if you have any trade questions relevant to your team, um, ask us, hit us in the comments, get us on Twitter. But we're going to talk about a couple guys that we think could definitely help your team going down into the stretch run, and we'll talk about situationally. It's all very situational, so we'll kick this off. Players that we think we should trade for, and we're going to talk about Brandon Aiyuk. Seen double-digit targets 2 weeks in a row. New Orleans is a tough defense. He saw 14 targets or 7 catches, 75 yards, and a touchdown. He's playing over 90% of the snaps, and they're using him very creatively.
Yeah, and he's might be on somebody's bench right now. So I think he's worth a start.
Exactly.
So if he's on someone's bench right now, I think you go try to trade for him. And his next matchups are kind of difficult. He's on a bye this week, so you can't use him this week. But going forward, it just looks like he's going to continue to see massive volume.
Exactly. And just the way that they're using him is so creative. He's had touchdowns now 3 out of the last 4 weeks. And has, been averaging close over 7 targets over that stretch. And I think, especially with George Kittle out, like I said earlier, Nick Mullins can produce fantasy relevancy, and I think Brandon Aiyuk has a super high ceiling and is going to, especially in PPR, is going to have a really, really safe floor.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and again, I think this is out of these guys we're talking about. I think he has the lowest trade value, and he has super high upside. So again, like you said, he's probably out there. There's a good chance he's sitting on someone's bench. Next up, We're talking about Chris Carson, and plays on Thursday night. And this is more of if I like Chris Carson a lot when he can finally get healthy. And his status for this Thursday night game against Arizona, he didn't practice on Monday, so we will see. They did say on Saturday that they're confident he'll play against Arizona, so we will have to see. But I really like Chris Carson. He has massive touchdown upside. Gets decent involvement in the passing game. Every game that he's played that he's been healthy, he's had at least 3 or more catches. And again, touchdown upside. He's going to be a huge boost to that Seattle offense when he returns.
Absolutely. And it's not even very much of a risk to me because when he plays, his floor is so safe. And it's just somebody, like you said, with touchdown upside. But the floor is just super solid with Chris Carson. And I think you should go trade for him. Just a guy I like to play in my lineup.
Yeah. I would say trade for him by the time you see a video, this will be uploaded Tuesday night. Trade for him today.
Immediately.
With the news coming out of him not being sure of not playing, even if he doesn't play, I'm really certain he'll play the game after. They play Philly, then the Giants. They have some favorable matchups going down the stretch. Carson Wentz is definitely a guy. We've seen it in the past, and we've seen the way Seattle uses their running backs down the stretch run. Chris Carson is definitely a guy that can win you a championship, get down the stretch, or at least win you some important games down the stretch run, because they really use Seattle leans on their running backs heavy when they are healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Go get them.
All right. And next up, we're going to talk about Aaron Jones. And obviously, this is a player that you're going to have to give up a lot for. But I think right now his volume is potentially the lowest it's been all season. You might be approaching a trade deadline. The Aaron Jones owner, he's missed a couple games. He came back, hasn't scored a touchdown, hasn't been the Aaron Jones that Aaron Jones owners want and need him to be. And they might be a little worried at this trade deadline. And you might be able to sneak in a good trade for Aaron Jones.
Yeah. He's got the super safe floor again. Just another player, super safe floor. So it's not a risk taking him. Always be cautious of what you have to give up. But like you said, he hasn't hit 20 points. He's only hit 40 points that 1 week, and since then he hasn't hit 20.
Yeah.
He's got very tough matchups coming up the next 3 weeks, but 14, 15, 16, those are the weeks. Detroit, Carolina, Tennessee, where I could see him just destroying and winning you the league.
Yeah, and absolutely. And again, he hasn't been scoring the touchdowns last 2 weeks, but he's getting double-digit carries. I think he's kind of getting back to health. His yards per carry has been a little bit down, but he's averaging about 4 catches per game, and that's huge. He is so talented. I think they're going to lean on him more and more as he gets healthier and as they go down the stretch run. And I think, again, obviously you're going into the trade deadline this week. They might be a little low on him. They haven't had a big Aaron Jones game since week 6. So an Aaron Jones owner might be worried. And again, Aaron Jones, like you said, those playoff matchups can win you a championship with his upside.
Yeah, and that week 6, that wasn't even that great of an Aaron Jones game.
No.
I think his second best game was week 4 against Atlanta, and then he played Detroit where he had 43 points. Yeah. But he plays Detroit again, so absolutely get him for that.
And again, especially massive upside. So you're gonna have to give up a nice piece for him. But I think if you could swap out a running back for him, there's a couple running backs that I think you could potentially swap out, pair him with a player that would be good for. So
yeah, I think a 2-for-1 is your most likely candidate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or unless you are stacked at receivers and somebody else needs one.
I agree with you. And next up, that's going to wrap it up for the 3 players we think you should trade for. Like you said, I think all three of these players could really help you out down the stretch run, get you into the playoffs, help you win a playoff championship. So go out and get them. It's a trade deadline. And again, always ask us if you have any questions. We know it is very important to make the right moves this week. So next up, we're going to talk about a couple players that we think if you have them on your team, you should think about looking elsewhere and replacing them with some better consistent play. And top player we're going to talk about trading away is Michael Thomas.
Yeah, it's a big name. He's not done anything yet, so you're really just trading on name value at this point and potential.
Yeah.
So I'd rather have production than both of name value and potential.
Yeah,
so.
absolutely. And we don't know what we're going to get with Jameis Winston. It is 3 favorable matchups going forward, but there's a lot of targets in that New Orleans offense. They like to throw the ball to Kamara, Emmanuel Sanders, Traquan Smith, Jared Cook. Taysom Hill will catch ball and do. It's a very creative offense, and they don't. I like we said, I think Jameis Winston could be pretty good, but I think they're going to try to limit what he does and still play a very conservative offense. And I think you sell him on the name value and the fact that he has 3 favorable matchups going up, but I don't think he's going to be a player that can help you win a championship going down the stretch run.
No. And if you drafted Michael Thomas, I'm guessing you're in a tough spot in your league right now and you need to make something happen.
Yeah.
So that's the guy I'm saying try to trade away. He's got at least value, but you probably need production right now. You don't need, I need Michael Thomas
to be the Michael Thomas of last year.
Yeah, exactly. I'd rather have 2 good players putting up double digits than Michael Thomas, even if he has a 30-point game,
Exactly.
I'd rather have let's see. If I could get a DeAndre Swift for a Michael Thomas, I'd take that.
Yeah, so how about so let's look at I'm looking at some wide receivers rest of season. That's on the Fantasy Pro, so you take it for what it's worth, take it with a grain of salt. They have, and I really disagree with a lot of these players. They have Michael Thomas the rest of the season ranked higher than Terry McLaurin. I definitely disagree with that. I don't know if
you could get Terry McLaurin for Michael Thomas, do that. I would recommend that trade.
They have him above Allen Robinson, a Will Fuller, which I would rather have him.
I agree with you for both of those guys.
How about a Tyler Boyd?
I like Tyler Boyd. I
agree with you.
Very safe. He's been safer than Michael Thomas has been this year.
Chris Godwin.
Yeah,
me too.
All these guys I like better than Michael Thomas. I drafted Michael Thomas in one of my other league that's not this league, and it's just been terrible. And I'm trying to trade him this week.
Yeah, I'm trying to trade him for anything I can get. I think there's a lot of players that have way less name value who are just straight up going to score more points from here on out than him.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, Michael Thomas. I think if you try and trade him. And next up is going to be a player who's been solid. He had some pretty good. He's been a solid player, but again, I think James Conner, with the way Pittsburgh has been using him, I'm a little concerned. It is concerning, and again, I think he still has really good value, but again, I'm concerned.
Yeah. He's a running back. That position holds a lot of value. We'll have to see. Going forward, you're probably able to sell him because of his name, but the 2 down weeks hurt him, especially now during the trade deadline. So it's gonna be hard for trade value.
Would you rather have DeAndre Swift or James Conner?
I'd rather have DeAndre Swift.
Okay,
but I think you could maybe make that deal because of James Conner's
I agree with you.
games in weeks 2 through 8. He was solid.
Yeah. What about Antonio Gibson?
I probably that's tough.
Yeah,
I
that's tough
I
for me.
think I think if Connor can get more involved like he was earlier in the season, he's better. Like when he gets the 15 touch threshold, super. But
Yeah, I don't like how much they use Benny Snell, and obviously it's a very creative offense. You know, they'll run the ball out with some wide receivers, and again they run the ball with Benny Snell a little bit, and it's definitely a winning formula. But for fantasy,
they
I'm
throw a lot in the five inside of 5 yards a lot.
exactly he doesn't get enough red zone touches for me. And I think I'd look elsewhere. I like Chris Carson more rest of season. I like Joe Mixon
I
rest of
agree.
season. DeAndre Swift.
Ooh. Joe Mixon's boomer bust for me.
I think Joe Mixon actually going forward for me is I really like Joe Mixon.
All right. Yeah, he did have a good second half of last year.
And I think, I think he's going to see decent involvement in the passing game. He's going to get high volume.
He does get the volume. I'll
Yeah.
say that
And
for sure.
I think he'll get some good passing work.
Is he? He's questionable this week. It's hard for me to go tell you to trade for Joe Mixon though, just because of the foot injury. I'd rather have Connor, who hasn't really missed time.
It's really close. It's really close.
Yeah.
I think personally for me, I'm a little higher on Joe Mixon, but they're close rest of the season.
He averages more points a game, I think. Joe Mixon averages 14, 8, and James Conner averages 12. So yeah, I don't know. He gets more touches.
Yeah, James Conner just as of late, he hasn't been losing you games, but he hasn't been winning you games in fantasy.
He actually might be losing you games.
Exactly. Yeah, and yeah, it's tough. You need big games out of your running backs. And again, don't just sell him for nothing, but make sure you get a nice player in return. If you're deep at running back, maybe you get a really nice wide receiver. Um, it all depends on your team makeup. But James Conner, I think there are plenty of players out there that you could get that will score more points rest of the season than him.
Agreed.
And next up, this one's gonna be tough for me. This one's gonna be tough. It's Christian McCaffrey.
Well,
all right.
Shaking things up.
Let me explain it. So you're a Christian McCaffrey owner. You've been struggling. You've had a couple good games out of Christian McCaffrey, but he hasn't been the player that obviously you needed because he hasn't been be able to stay on the field. Nagging shoulder injury, status in doubt again. I just don't know how much. Like if you're a Panthers owner, he came back after injury and got injured right away with an injury that has a high chance of re-injury, especially at his position, the way he plays, catching so many balls. Uh, I think they're gonna hopefully be cautious with Christian McCaffrey. And again, you need wins now. I would rather have see if you can get Aaron Jones.
That's a risk I think I would be willing to take, but it's gonna be hard to convince Christian McCaffrey owners who probably won all 3 weeks he played to give up Christian McCaffrey. But I'm not gonna disagree with your logic.
I'm saying if I'm a Christian McCaffrey owner, I'm gonna try to trade him.
I agree, but a lot of Christian McCaffrey owners won week 1. They won week 2. They won week 10 or week 9. So it's going to be hard for them to be like, I was winning when McCaffrey played. Maybe he'll play again and I'll win again. So it's going to be hard to convince them. I don't disagree with the logic.
I think, again, and this is more of a position of a McCaffrey owner. Personally, if I'm a McCaffrey owner, I'm going to look to try to get a top running back, a Derrick Henry, maybe a Nick Chubb, a Aaron Jones, just to get that for sure consistency out of a playoff contending team down the stretch of a healthier player that doesn't have that risky injury for me. And again, I'm not trading him for anything but a top player. And again, if you've been winning without McCaffrey, maybe not. But if you've been losing, and if you really need wins now, and this is obviously the trade deadline, I would, again, Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones. You could potentially get for McCaffrey, and I think, McCaffrey might be better when he does play, but how many games is he going to play? We're just not sure. And, the Panthers aren't in playoff contention. I think you get some nice value for Christian McCaffrey for some if you need a win now situation.
Yeah, I try it out.
I mean, if you have Christian McCaffrey and you're a game or two out of the playoffs right now, I'm gonna try to trade Christian McCaffrey because I'd be worried about his status for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, it's hard for me to go all in on that one. I'll say I'm 50-50 on that one. Just situational for sure with your team, but it's hard to see him. If Christian McCaffrey plays, do you see him getting under 18 points?
No, but I don't know how much he plays. I think you could potentially get a player that averages over 15 points a game and will do that every single game from here on out, is what I'm saying. And again, if you're on the outside looking in, and you need to win this week and you need to win the week after and you have Christian McCaffrey, I'd be worried, How much is he going to play this week? Is he going to play the week after? We're not sure.
Worried,
and
it's just maybe a risk you don't want to take.
It's a risk to have McCaffrey. It's a safer thing to those would probably be the only guys that I think you potentially could get and that I would trade for straight up for McCaffrey would be like a Nick Chubb, a Aaron Jones, or a Derrick Henry because that's going to be for sure production out of a playoff contending team.
And they do have a bye too. So keep that in mind.
And again, that's what I'm saying. So if you're on the outside looking in, how many games is McCaffrey going to play? Maybe if you've been winning, if you feel like you've got a playoff spot locked, maybe I wouldn't trade McCaffrey. But again, you might not be in that situation if you drafted McCaffrey obviously you drafted him number 1.
Yeah, I agree. So it's situational, but I'm not against trading McCaffrey. I'm not opposed to it.
Yeah,
it's just it's gonna be hard to convince McCaffrey owners that is the call they're gonna make. They've held on for so long. They've been so happy when he's gotten in, and at this point, I feel like it'd be hard for most to let go.
Yeah, it's hard to let go, but you might have to just.
It might be the decision that turns your fantasy season around.
Yeah, and it really hurt owners when McCaffrey went down again.
And yeah, by no means start high even. Start higher than you think you can get.
I think start with like a Derrick Henry,
I think start with Derrick Henry and somebody else. And then just sell high.
Maybe see if you could package a lower tier receiver with the higher tier receiver and,
Be him in the middle because I think he will have value to teams who are trying to make a playoff push.
Yeah, exactly. If for teams that are trying to make a playoff spots, I totally agree with you, but there's definitely a chance he doesn't suit up until the fantasy playoffs.
No, I agree. But I'm just saying, maybe somebody has I don't even know. Josh Jacobs, Nick Chubb, James Robinson.
Yeah.
You can go get one of those guys
and a receiver. Yeah. I totally agree with you. And again, this is if you're in the playoffs, if you got a playoff spot locked, you've been winning without McCaffrey in his weeks, I'd hang on to him. But yeah, if you need to win you got 3 games left in the regular season to lock up a playoff spot, and I'd be worried if McCaffrey's going to suit up for any of them. So obviously, a player that if you're going to trade for him, make sure you're getting a massive haul for him. 2 really good players or 1 incredible running back, or
Because when he does play, he's been averaging 27 points.
Yeah.
A half-point PPR.
Yep. Absolutely.
So
he's been a monster.
Over 30 points PPR. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he can definitely make or he could definitely make or break a season. If and honestly, put it like this: if I'm on the outside looking in with McCaffrey, I'm trading him away. If I'm in a winning spot right now, and if I have a playoff spot locked, I might look to trade for McCaffrey.
Just depends what you'd have to give up. But yeah, I agree with you.
Like you said, if you're winning and you had a Josh Jacobs, a Nick Chubb, and a James Robinson
right now. Yeah, and you're 10-1 right now. You already got it locked in. Yeah, I would definitely consider that.
Yeah, you might have picked up James Robinson off the free agency waivers. You might have, you could have drafted late round, took Keenan Allen or DK Metcalf or someone like that, and just there's plenty of situations where you could have a really solid team with 3 really good running backs, and you're just smashing, and you could look to, upgrade. So situational.
Christian McCaffrey or Kareem Hunt and Terry McLaurin. That's a good trade, right?
Oh yeah, I'm doing that in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
If you need to win now, for sure.
I tried to trade Michael Thomas for Kareem Hunt. I don't think he's gonna do it.
No, I don't think he's gonna do that. Well, yeah, and again, I think that's gonna wrap it up for the 3 players that we think you should trade for. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey, incredible talented, but we explain those situations, and yeah, there it is. Hope you guys got a win week 10. This is the important stretch run. 3 weeks left to go in the regular season, so make sure you make the right calls. With all the trades, with the trade deadline this week, it's a big week this week. It really is, with trade deadline and coming down to the stretch run.
Yeah, so stay tuned for our ranking show, and hopefully we can give you a better idea of what is our outlook on this week.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be going live on Thursday, so make sure you check that out. As always, my name is Will. You can find me on Instagram at @MPLS_outdoors and follow the socials on Instagram and Twitter at Across the Plane. You can find our full-length podcast on Spotify and anywhere else you listen to your podcasts. And subscribe and hit the bell on YouTube, because we're putting out lots of fantasy content, and we want to make sure we're there to help you win a championship down the stretch run. And that's what it's all about, making those those right calls. It's do or die time. And you know what? Maybe you're 8-1. Maybe you're undefeated. Maybe it's not do or die time, but for a lot of people, it is do or die time.
Yeah, it's crunch time. I'll say that. Every win matters now. You're going to want to keep posted on these videos. Jake the Rookie, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on our ranking show.